What happens? Let's just quickly break away from this. Just go to our sidebar over here. When I have an equation that says, I had an equation of whatever, I worked through it, I simplified, and at this point, I get, so there was some stuff that I did here. And now I get 2x is equal to 6. Right, so my question would then be, have I solved for x? You would say no, because they didn't ask me for 2x, they asked me for x. So then I would say, okay, how do I get rid of my coefficient? And you would say, I need to perform an inverse operation, isn't it? That's what equations is, performing inverse operations the whole time until you get the thing that you're looking for. What inverse operation must happen here? Division, because this is 2 times x. So the inverse operation is then division, so dividing by 2. So I would say 2x divide by 2 to get rid of the 2. Of course, doing the same thing on the other side. So I would then solve for x. Yes? At this point, I've got no coefficient, but I've got something that I don't want there. So I am looking for an inverse operation for the square. What is the inverse operation of a square? Is actually the question here. You know the inverse operation for addition is subtraction. You know that the inverse operation for subtraction is addition. You know that the inverse operation for multiplication is division. And the inverse operation for division is multiplication. Vice versa, back and forth. What is the inverse operation for something raised to the power of 2? You know this, you just don't know that you know it. This is x raised to the power of 2. X squared. What other operation has that word in it, square? Yes. Square root. Square root. If I have 3 multiplied by 3, I get an answer of 9. Right? It's the same as saying 3 multiplied by 3 is equal to 3 to the power of 2 or 3 squared. We know that the square of 3 is 9 and the square root of 9 is 3. Inverse. Did you know this? The inverse operation of squares is square root. So if I take the square root of 3 to the power 2, it just pops out a 3. Because the root and the square destroy each other. That's what inverses do, right? The plus and the minus cancel each other out when you're using inverse. Are we getting this? If I had a multiplication here, 2 times x. What did I do to get rid of the 2? To destroy the 2? I divided by the 2. So I had multiplication, I'm using division to get rid of what I don't want. Same thing here. So in other words, what must I do to x squared to get rid of the square?
X to the power of 2 divided by
If you look at this here, I have 3 to the power of 2. Am I dividing by anything here? No, right? Remember the times and divide thing happens when it comes to times and divide. This is not times and divide. It's squaring and square rooting. So if I want to get rid of the square, I need to square root the square. In other words, I'm going to say the square root of x to the power 2. So I performed an operation. What's the operation? Square root. So I must do the same thing on the other side. So in other words, the square root of 80. The square root will get rid of the square that you don't want. So out will pop an x, which you do want. And here, of course, you're going to need a bit of calculator magic. Because do you know the square root of 80 out of your head? No. Is 80 a perfect square? No. So your answer is going to be some kind of decimal number, isn't it? So you will need to use your calculator. Round it off to 2 decimal places for me, please. That means you must quickly do it. What square the weighting? Yes. 8.94. Alright. What's after the 4 on your calculator? Is it the 4? I must make sure because you guys don't know how to round off. Huh? 8.94, okay. I must check. And I'm on camera and people are going to say, what to do? Okay, so it's 8.94. So that means the long side is equal to 8.94. Is that then true, what Pythagoras said? Is the hypotenuse longer than the other two? Yes, it's longer than 4 obviously. Is it longer than 8? Yes. So this side is then, remember the answer here, that part, that was not your answer. In other words, the side of x is not 80. The square of that side is 80. So in order to find the side, and that's what I said, this is where you make mistakes. You need to take the square root because that will give you the actual value of that side, which is in this case 8,94.